we will start the presentation. Before going into the presentation, one corporate action I want to mention. TCS is coming out with results on 12th next week. On the same day, they are going to consider buyback. This is the fourth buyback they are considering in the last 4 years. And if you see historically, in the last 4 years, every buyback price was higher than previous buyback. And on 12th, I am expecting the buyback price will be around 4,300 to 500. And the quantum of buyback is expected to be around 15,000 crores to 20,000 crores. That's what my expectation is. Mostly it will come in line with that. Let's see what TCS management says on 12th. Why TCS is considering buyback every year is that whenever a buyback is made by TCS, its promoter Tata Sons will participate in that. Tata Sons owns almost 72% of stake in TCS. For example, if 10,000 crores of buyback is announced, means Tata Sons will tender all its shares. 72% stake means 7,200 crores Tata Sons will get. So Tata Sons will be the major beneficiary in the buyback. That's why every year company tends to distribute money in the form of dividend as well as through buyback. Because of this buyback, I am expecting IT stocks to be stable on Monday in spite of weak Nasdaq, as well as Tata Group stocks also expected to see some positive action on Monday. Now coming to the presentation, last second Saturday meeting, we saw valuations in detail, and this time I have added a lot of more slides, both macroeconomy and individual sector slides. I hope it will be useful to you, and some of the slides are highly educational purpose I have added, and that also will be very useful to you. Now coming into the market, if you see Nifty is almost range bound for the last 2 months. If you see Nifty is range bound. Last month it was negative, and in the following month, if you see the last month before that, 2 months back it was negative, and in the last 1 month, if you see Nifty has gone up marginally. So almost the market is in consolidation now, whereas the main action is happening in small caps and mid caps. So many stocks are going up. And there is a huge activity happening in cats and dogs stocks. So what is meant by cats and dogs? I have put a separate slide for that, and in detail I will explain what is meant by cats and dogs, what is happening there, and what should a retail investor should do in these stocks. That I will explain in detail in coming slides. Foreign investors, they were continuously selling in the month of October, November, and December. And in the January, for the last 3-4 days, they did not sell. Only day before yesterday they sold, and yesterday also they were marginal buyers. So overall, foreign investors were on sidelines, and the main liquidity support is coming from domestic investors and the domestic institutions, which is primarily led by mutual funds and insurance companies. So overall, market is looking good for retail investors, mainly because many mid and small caps are going up. Whereas large caps, there is no major correction happening. They are consolidating. So overall, it's a good market. And if you see the crude oil prices, it has spiked again, and it has again gone above $80. And Nifty in the last 1 month, if you see, Nifty and Sensex has gone up by around 1.6%, whereas mid cap was slightly lagging by 0.2. Small cap did well, around 2.6% gain in the last 1 month. So overall, it's a good market to do trading, as well as the retail investors also happy because of many micro cap stocks and are going up, and they are happy with their portfolio. And coming into the bull market cycle, if you see, we are almost on the 100th week of the bull market. Historically, if you see, we had a 4 or 5 bull markets in our country. Among them, major bull market from 1990, if you take, major bull markets are 91-92. That is the Harshad Mehta bull market. Then we had 99 2000 bull market, where the dot-com bubble, many IT stocks, communication stocks, and entertainment stocks went up, which was mainly led by Nasdaq. At that time, Nasdaq also had a huge rally in their index, and our IT stocks participated during that rally. So 99 2000 bull market we had. Then the next one was 2003 to 7, which is one of the healthiest and lengthiest bull market we have seen in our history till now. That is 2003 to 7. Almost it spanned four years, and index went up by almost 7 times during that period. And if you leave aside this bull market, then March 20, the current bull market we are seeing now, it is also a healthy bull market, almost 100 weeks now, and it is still continuing. And the two other bull markets we had in 2009-10, then in 93-94. These two bull market, though indices went up by almost 100% from the bottom, these are basically pullback rallies we have seen, though it looks like a bull market. For example, 93-94, what happened after 91-92 Harshad Mehta boom, index went up by almost 4 times in 1 year. And then we had a very steep fall. So from the bottom, index again went up, mainly led by foreign institutional investors, because that was the first time Indian government allowed foreign institutional investor to put in our market. So they came and bought many stocks, and the market was also on a low due to Harshad Mehta scam, and index went up from the bottom. The second pullback rally we saw was in 2009 and 10. After the index going up by 7 times, global financial crisis came. Then the index fell very sharply. So from the bottom, 2009 and 10, we had a 100% rally on the upside. So if we leave aside two pullback rallies, that is 2009 and 10 and 93-94, the major bull markets we have seen is in our history is four bull markets. 91-92, which is Harshad Mehta bull market, which is almost 4 times up. Then 98 to 2000, which is led by IT stocks, almost 100% went up. Then 2003 to 8, which is the lengthiest and highest return giving bull market, which spanned almost 4 years, 2003 to 8, and the final one is the bull market which we are seeing now, and it started in March 2020. From there, still we are continuing. Almost now it is 100 weeks old now, the current bull market. And the readings we are getting from the current bull market is that generally a bull market used to span for 2 to 3 years. And if you see that time wise, our current bull market is mature. So from here on, market has to go up, means earnings support is very crucial for bull market sustainability. Generally, if you see, for a stock market to go up, it needs two support. One is fundamental support, the next one is liquidity support. When fundamental support comes, means naturally liquidity also will start coming in. So current bull market, which is almost 100 weeks old, for sustainability, we need earnings support from corporates for further going up. You know, 2003 to 8 is the longest bull market in history, with over 600% index return. From Sensex 3,000 points, 3,500 points, it went to 21,000 level in 4 years, 2003 to 8. That is almost over 600% index return in 4 year time, which was purely backed by earnings growth. That is why that market gave a lot of multi-baggers, because the earnings support was there and so many people came, so many investors came. Unfortunately, global financial crisis came and spoiled that bull market. So what we are expecting is that the repeat of 2003 to 8 type bull market is difficult, because at that time both domestic economy was doing well as well as the global economy was doing well. Our exports was continuously growing between 15 to 20%. Similarly, domestic economy was growing around 8% of GDP, and that led to a very strong bull market, which is primarily supported by fundamentals. So that type of bull market is difficult to get, but we are expecting that the current bull market still has some more steam left. We expect the fundamentals to improve, and give support to the current bull market. And this is the Nifty 50 EPS over the years. If you see that the earnings, it has been taken from a Bloomberg Quint website, and the source is C.K. Narayan. He is the one of the technical analysts who used to come in TV and tell about his opinion. Based on this data, if you see that this is based on calendar year, you don't mistake it with a financial year. Don't mix it with financial year Nifty EPS. This is based on calendar year earnings, and 2021. If you see the fourth quarter results will start coming here on, but because of based on projection of fourth quarter earnings, this Nifty EPS has been calculated for 2021. And if you see in the history for the last 22 years, generally the earnings tend to be flat for a few years, then go up sharply, then again be flat for a few years, then go up sharply, then again be flat for a few years, then go up sharply. That is what historically has happened. This indicates that the economy is cyclical. During up move, earnings used to go up. Then when economy turns down, earnings used to be flat. Then again upcycle, earnings goes up, then flat, then again earnings goes up. That is what has happened in the last 21 years. If you see between 98 and 2003, earnings was almost flat. There was not big earnings growth in our market. The only exception was IT stocks, which did very well during that time. But what happened was that IT stocks added in the index only during 99 and 2000. So that is why it did not got reflected in the Nifty earnings during that time. That was the nascent stage of IT stocks getting listed in our market. And after that, if you see between 2003 to 7, more than 140% earnings growth was there. Every year, there was a sharp increase in earnings, 2003 to 4, then 4 to 5, 5 to 6, then 6 to 7, then 7 to 8. Almost 5 years, we had a very strong earnings, which led to a huge rally in our market in 2003 and 8. Then after that, again, earnings plateaued. Then 11, 12, we had some earnings growth. And 14 to 19, if you see, virtually there was no earnings growth during that period. In 2020, COVID came, so there was some fall in earnings. Now, again, the earnings has been going up. This time, the growth in earnings was mainly led by commodity companies. Tata Steel, Hindalco, they all posted record profits in their history during this period. And that is led to huge increase in Nifty earnings going up. Similarly, banks, if you see Axis Bank, ICICI Bank, SBI, last 3-4 years, all were struggling due to higher provisions. Now the provisions period were over. Their profitability have started increasing very sharply, which led to higher Nifty EPS growth. Then IT stocks also gave support. That is why if you see for 2021, there is a huge increase in the Nifty earnings growth for 2021. So now what many people are expecting is that if you see historically, there will be a plateau of earnings, then earnings will go up, then again plateau, then earnings will go up, then again plateau. Now it has started going up earnings. So they are expecting that this earnings subcycle may continue for at least 2-3 years, which will give fundamental support to the market. That is what expectation of many analysts are. And another interesting figure is that the Sensex earnings has been plotted for the last 21 years. Every year return has been shown in this last column, gain and loss. And if you see that in the last 21 years, only 4 years Sensex has given negative returns. In all other years, it has given positive returns. And if somebody see this table, means they feel that there's that Nifty Sensex is not much volatile. Maybe in 1 year the index return may be less. For example, in 2018 index return was less by 6%, and 2016 it was 1%. Whereas it has been compensated by high return by 13%, 15%, 21% in the following year. In 2016, the Sensex return was 1.7, but in the following year it gave 28%. So virtually, if you see that the Sensex is not much volatile over a period of time. though it looks highly volatile, but in actual data, if you see that the Sensex is not volatile over a period of time. In my initial speech, I told that many stocks are going up, cats and dogs are running up. So what is by cats and dogs means it's a stock market term which indicates that, which tells that companies which are questionable corporate governance and which have very poor fundamentals, they are termed as cats and dogs companies in stock market. What we are seeing now is that many companies are going up like this. 1 week back, one of our HNI client told that he was owning Suzlon for last so many years. Within 20 days, the stock price doubled from 5 rupees to more than 10 rupees. He asked me whether any reason is there, any corporate action is coming, why the stock price has gone up like this. So I told him that it is not only Suzlon, so many stocks with very questionable corporate governance or with very poor business fundamentals, they are going up sharply. Like Suzlon, hundreds of companies which are listed in BSE and many companies which are listed in NSE, they are going up without any backup of fundamentals and or any business fundamentals or any corporate actions, they are going up. So I told him to be careful, because generally what used to happen is that many first time investors used to fall prey to this type of stocks, because now we are in social media world. Lot of stories can be easily built in and can be circulated within one day to lakhs and lakhs of investors. Like that, no, so many stories are going up in media. The same stock will go up by 5%, 20% next 3-4 days, and investor will believe that story. Generally the first time investor used to believe that story. Somebody who is in the market for 20 years, 30 years, they would have seen this type of stories previously, and most of them would have lost money. These clients may be cautious now, but those who are new to the market, they will believe that it is true and it will happen, and they will buy. And finally, what is to happen once the dust settles down, all the stocks will again start falling. And what will happen means you won't get exit door to these stocks, because it will hit circuit limit 5% down, and you won't get it. Just a few years back, so many of them can remember that one stock called DHFL, Diwan Housing Finance, Vakrangi Software, then you have Yes Bank. Many investors got stuck into it. From 400, 500, 600 rupees from DHFL, from 600 rupees, it became zero. And during the fall time, what happened was that many investors got stuck into it, and they could not be able to exit also. And what the worst thing they did was that they kept on averaging at the lower end. Somebody bought DHFL at 400 rupees. When it fell to 200 rupees, they again averaged. When it fell to 100 rupees, they again averaged. Then when it fell to 50 rupees, they again averaged. When it fell to 25 rupees, they again averaged, and they kept on average, and finally they lost their entire money. So we have to be very careful in this type of stock. And out of 10 stories, generally 8 stories will be just a hype only. It won't happen in reality, and maybe 1 or 2 may happen. And we have to be extremely careful in this type of stocks, and we should not fall prey into this, because there is a possibility of losing entire capital in this type of stocks. One company called Brightcom. Many investors asked me when it was 100 rupees, can I buy this? When I checked it, that company changed the name almost 3 times in the last 5 years. The last name was now Brightcom. From the low of less than 10 rupees, the price went to almost now 200 rupees. And when a client asked me at 100 rupees, I said that the company promoters are not genuine and the fundamentals are not good. I told a negative on that, but from 100 rupees it went to 200. The same client asked me, and I asked about 100 rupees, you said not to buy. Now it has gone to 200 rupees. So it's a difficult time for fundamentals guy, because they generally used to go wrong in this type of company in near term, but they will be correct at some point of time in the future. whatever price it goes, again it will come back to less than 10 rupees in next 3 years, 4 years, but we don't know when it will happen. But in near term, all the fundamental guys are getting bad name because so many stocks with poor corporate governance and poor business fundamentals are going up, and they are advising investors to avoid it, but still the stock prices are going up. Now we have come to 2022, that's the new year, and some of the major events we are expecting in coming days. If you see, the first one is going to be the Fed rate hike is going to come. So yesterday, US Fed, US unemployment data came. It was extremely strong. So post the US unemployment data, now everyone is convinced that US Fed is going to increase the rate in the month of March. Just 2 months away from it. Once US Fed start increasing the rate means, then definitely RBI will also follow the rate hike, because already in our country the consumer price inflation is low, whereas the WPI inflation has gone above 14%, which is a multi-year high. So when US Fed rate hikes means, immediately it will followed by many central banks, and I expect RBI rate hike also will immediately come in once the US Fed rate hike comes. So we have to see how the market adjusts for the US Fed rate hike and RBI rate hike in coming months. If economy is very strong means, naturally it will absorb. Suppose if economy is weak means, then the rate hike may have impact on rate sensitive companies. The second major event I am expecting is that right now we are seeing so many stocks are going up based on electric vehicle stories, renewable energy stories, and most of them are telling that this company will do well in the next 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And these companies don't have, most of the companies are loss-making companies, and they won't get any return on equity on electric vehicle or renewable energy space. And some of the companies do have poor fundamentals as well as poor corporate governance, and many stock prices has gone up a lot because of the story got built up, and these stories will see a reality check. I don't expect that throughout 2022 the stock price will keep on going up. Some reality check will happen to the cats and dogs stocks, and some stocks which have gone up very sharply based on electric vehicle and renewable energy story, and these stocks will see some reality check in current year. And if the third thing which is likely to happen is that valuation compression may happen in new businesses. Many newly listed business, they are loss-making companies, they are trading at very high valuation, and once Fed start increasing the rate, and as well as the balance sheet of US Fed likely to get reduced. That is what US Fed minutes indicated 2 days back. And if that happens means, naturally valuation compression will happen in newly listed business, and some of the companies, old economic companies which are trading at very high valuations like 80 PE, 90 PE, their earnings will improve, whereas the stock price will not go up, leading to again valuation compression in this type of stocks. So these three major events I am expecting in 2022. And many clients were asking me, can you name some electric vehicle plays stocks which can be played in through our stock market? See, electric vehicle is a new sector, and so many companies are trying into it, and only after 5 years, 10 years only we will come to know who is going to be successful, who is going to lose money in that, because it is an evolving sector. Still the technology is changing extremely fast. 2-3 years back everyone was telling lithium ion battery, now everyone talking about lithium sodium battery. Like that, the technology is changing within 1 year, and no one knows which is going to success and which is going to failure. But some stocks which can be played safely in our stock market for electric vehicle play means, Tata Motor, they are the early entrant into this sector. They are an electric vehicle manufacturer, and they are the only four-wheeler which has shown some success in selling electric vehicles in our country till now. Though volumes are extremely low, but they are yearly entrant. They managed to raise some money in their electric subsidiary also, electric vehicle subsidiary also. So Tata Motor can consider. Tata Power, they are actually electric vehicle. They are trying to put charging station throughout the country. Basically, they are the infrastructure provider for electric vehicles, and that also can be considered. Tata Chemical, they want to become the raw material supplier to lithium battery makers. They are going to keep a lithium ion recycling plant, and they are constantly focusing in that space. The next one is the KPIT Technology, which is an IT service provider. As you all know that electric vehicle basically consists of lot of softwares to run that car. It is completely different from what we have seen in the last 10 years, 20 years car, where basically most of the mechanical parts are there. Right now, the new electric vehicle mostly consists of software run artificial intelligence run cars. And KPIT is one of the reputed company which is in this field for so many years. That also can be considered. JBM Auto and Electra, I don't recommend it because the price has gone up a lot. Electra, it has lot of corporate governance issue, lot of related party transactions are there. So I don't recommend Electra to buy except for a speculative purpose. JBM Auto also a four-wheeler manufacturer, and they are also planning to put a charging station. That also I feel valuation looks very high. In auto ancillary space, one group which is looking very deep into electric vehicle space is Minda Industry and Minda Corporation, which can one consider it. Though all these stock prices has gone up and most of the positive news are already in the price, somebody want to play EV space means they can consider these stocks except JBM Auto and Electra for speculative purpose. This is the US unemployment, US consumer inflation chart. I told two slides back that US Fed will definitely increase the interest rate in the month of March. There is a 85% chance of increasing interest rate in the month of March. So why they will increase the interest rate? US Fed. Basically, US Fed has two mandates. One is that US Fed has given two mandates. One is that their job is to keep inflation under check, and the second job is second mandate for US Fed is that they have to keep unemployment very low. That means they have to make an environment in US that maximum employment happens. That means unemployment should be low, inflation should be low. That is the US Fed mandate. And if you see the unemployment data in US, yesterday it came. During the COVID period, unemployment went up to 15%. And from there, it fell sharply because of US economy doing well. And yesterday data was 3.9%. So 3.9% is almost equal to pre-COVID levels. So the US unemployment rate of 3.9% is almost acceptable for US Fed. On the other hand, if you see that inflation is at multi-year high, this is more than a 20-year chart I have plotted. And if you see that the inflation data is 6.9% last data came, and it is at a multi-year high. And this month data, which is likely to come soon, and it is expected that US inflation is going to cross 7%. And with so much inflation is in place, definitely US Fed will try to cool down the inflation. They may increase the interest rate. Since the unemployment rate is benign and inflation is very high, that US Fed will increase the interest rate in the month of March. And expectation now is that there is 85% of chance of increasing the interest rate. And US Fed is not only planning to increase the interest rate, they also mentioned that they are going to reduce the balance sheet size. Right now, every month they were injecting almost 120 billion of US dollar due to quantitative easing. That is getting reduced most probably by next month or in the month of March. Complete quantitative easing will get stopped, and post that the interest rate hike will come. Once the quantitative easing is stopped, means naturally the balance sheet size will start shrinking in. Since the US did quantitative easing, lot of liquidity was available throughout the world, and that was supportive for many startups and many companies which were listed in Nasdaq, and that were providing liquidity to these companies. Now, once that liquidity starts tightening, means naturally what will happen is that these companies will start facing the valuation compression. And till now, we have seen that liquidity has given support to valuations, and liquidity if starts drying in, means naturally valuation compression will happen. Even fundamentals starts improving, lack of liquidity will reduce valuations of many companies. That will happen throughout 2022 now. And this is the Nasdaq Composite chart. If you see that last 1 week, the Nasdaq Composite has been coming down. And another interesting factor in the Nasdaq is that so many stocks has fell more than 50% from their high, 52-week high. And if you, that is the bottom of the chart I have put in. And if you see that in the bottom of the chart, the number of stocks hitting lower when compared to more than 50% high is that it is almost nearing to 40%. And in history, if you see, it has happened only 2-3 times. One was during COVID fall, then during in 2009-10, that is in global economic crisis time, then during the dot-com bubble burst. This has happened. This line was breached only 3 times in the past, and now we are breaching again now. Even though indices did not fell much from the peak, whereas the many stocks has fell more than 50% from their 52-week high. One of the reason is that market is discounting the Fed rate hike in the Nasdaq, as well as the tighter liquidity we are going to see in coming days in US. So the stock price has already started discounting in Nasdaq the higher interest rate. And coming to our domestic market, if you see, there is a massive divergence in inflation. We have two inflation data. That is, one is consumer price inflation. The another one is wholesale price inflation. Till Raghuram Rajan became RBI governor, RBI used to see only WPI inflation. That is wholesale price inflation for all their monetary policy decision. They don't look into consumer price inflation at that time. Only after RBI governor, when Raghuram Rajan became RBI governor, he took a decision that RBI will look into consumer price inflation for monetary policy decision. They won't look into wholesale price inflation. And if you see that consumer price inflation, it is around 5%. It is now, whereas WPI inflation, it has gone above 14%, which is multi-decade high. So this type of inflation we haven't seen for so many years. WPI inflation, now it has gone to 14%. So why is the divergence? Luckily, RBI now is taking only CPI into consideration, not WPI into consideration. Suppose if RBI is looking into WPI for making decisions on interest rate, means at least we would have seen 2-3 rate hikes from RBI. Since they are looking into CPI, till now there is no rate hike has happened. So why there is a big divergence between WPI and CPI? If you see, means it is basically due to the constituents in the indices of CPI and WPI. If you see consumer price inflation, the main weightage is food and beverages. Almost 45% weightage of consumer price index is food and beverages. The consumer price index is designed in a way that it affects a common man. What RBI sees is that the common family in India spends almost 45% of their income for food and beverages only. Almost beverages means milk, everything will come. Food and 45%, an average family in India spends for food and beverages. That is why the food and beverages index constitute around 45% weightage. Housing 10%, clothing, fuel and light, that is electricity, 6.8%. Then clothing and footwear, 6.5% weightage is there. The pan, tobacco, the other things, 2% weightage is there. Miscellaneous, the other things has 28%. The other thing which includes education, then travel. That means suppose you are traveling from public transport through bus, means all these things has been included in the miscellaneous. So this is the constituent of the consumer price index. Since it has 45% food and beverages, and food prices hasn't gone that much. That is why the CPI index has been less than 10% even till now. Whereas if you see wholesale price index, manufactured parts has a 65% weightage now. 65% weightage means the manufactured parts means almost all things will come which are using steel, aluminum, copper, or air conditioner. Everything will come into this, and we all know that the commodity prices has gone up very sharply, and that is why the wholesale price index has gone up to 14%. Fuel and power 15%, and primary articles, that is 20. In primary articles only, food also has some weightage, and that has come into the primary article segment. In the primary articles, it has both food and non-food items, and food has around 10% weightage in wholesale price index, whereas in consumer price index, it has 45% weightage. So because of the difference in constituents between CPI and wholesale price index, there is a big divergence between CPI and WPI in our country. But we are expecting that CPI will go further from here, and once the US Fed starts increasing interest rate, naturally RBI will also increase interest rate. If RBI doesn't increase interest rate, naturally rupee will start weakening. The other big event which is happening parallelly is the COVID fear, which is a never-ending fear in the last 2 years. Almost 2 years has started, and if you see that the COVID cycle, the news cycle has started in some country. Globally, if you see, it is almost fourth cycle, whereas in our country, if you see, it is the third wave we have started in our country. In many countries, we are seeing the fourth wave, and globally also the fourth wave has started. The only thing this time is that it is not much severe this time. Omicron, it is led by Omicron variant. It is extremely contagious because the cases are going up like anything, and many relatives are there in Chennai. My relatives are there, and I have heard in the last 1 week more than 10-15 people told me that they are having fever, and some of them have given for test, they got positive, and some of them are did test, but they are staying inside the home, though the symptoms are almost similar. Cough, similar to that of COVID, cough, mild fever, and tiredness. But within 4 or 5 days, it is getting over without much damage. And I'm having a feeling that the way I'm getting the news from Tamil Nadu, in Chennai alone, you may be having 50,000 to 1 lakh cases happening daily, whereas officially it is only 5,000 cases there in Tamil Nadu, and we expect that more people to get affected in coming days, and we will be lucky if it is extremely mild and it is goes away. And throughout the world, no one has put a lockdown because of less hospitalization and less ICU admission. Because of that only reason, government did not touch the economy, because a full lockdown, if it put means, then what will happen is the economy will again come into trouble. In order to avoid that, government is waiting. Suppose if hospital start overwhelmed with patients means, then government will have no option but to impose lockdown. And if you see, this is the global cases has gone up like a perpendicular line in the last 1 week, 10 days. So this is the fourth wave. If you see globally, first wave between around December 2020. Then again we have second wave globally between in April 2020. Then August we had it, the third wave. Now the fourth wave. Now we are seeing now. December 2021 and in January. Everybody expectation was that it will be very sharp uptick, similarly sharp downtick. That is what everyone is expecting. And India, it is a third wave. First wave we had it in September, October 2020. Then we had it in May last year, May, June 2021. Now again we are seeing a perpendicular line, and everyone expecting the number of cases will surpass previous peak of 4 lakhs. It will be extremely sharp. Similarly, it will fall extremely, extreme sharp fall will be there. That is what everyone expectation is. Till now, the cases are mild, and we will be happy that if it continues like it, and it will fall very sharply without doing much damage for everybody's health and as well as to economy. Now Q3 earnings are going to come on next week on 12th. 3 major IT companies are coming: TCS, Infosys, and Wipro. These 3 companies will announce earnings on 12th, and already TCS is going to consider buyback. And the earnings review on my part is that IT and banks likely to post decent results. Banks profit will go up mainly because now the disbursement started increasing in the last 2-3 days. Many bankers and financial analysts came in TV. They said that October month was better than September, November was better than October, and December was better than November. So every month sequentially there is a improvement in banks disbursement, and as well as the NPA recognition period is over, so the provisions will start coming down. That will lead to banks profitability more in this quarter. So IT and banks likely to post decent results, and steel and cement year on year they may do well, but quarter on quarter if you see, steel profitability will come down because last quarter was extremely good for steel. Tata Steel posted very good profits, and after that 2 headwinds came for steel company. One is that raw material prices went up very sharply, coking coal, and the next one is that the expected volume growth did not happen due to destocking by consumers because steel prices went up very sharply. There was an expectation that steel prices may come down. So the destocking process took place in the third quarter, which led to less volume in the third quarter. And because of less volume and higher raw material prices, steel companies on quarter, they will show dip in profit, whereas year on year, they will still show higher profits. Cement companies, they also had a headwind of higher coal prices, which is one of the main raw material for heating. And the second thing is that volume also was lower than expected. Because of that, cement companies also expected to show quarter dip in profit. Pharma companies, they will post mixed results because some of the pharma ingredients prices went up very sharply due to supply chain issues, and that may affect some pharma companies, particularly the API companies, and we have to see how pharma results will come. My expectation is that some companies will post good results, some companies may post average results because of high raw material prices. FMCG, consumer, autos, all will see margin pressure, and this quarter the margin price is likely to continue, and they may bottom out because most of the company took price hike, and all the price hike will get reflected only from next quarter. So the third quarter companies will continue to see margin pressure, and FMCG, their volume growth also very muted. There is no volume growth, followed by margin compression will happen. Another interesting data which is happening in domestic data, which is happening, is the export import data. And if you see that export imports are happening at record levels, almost highest ever export has happened in last month, that is in the month of December. Similarly, highest ever imports has happened in the month of December. So the last month export and imports were extremely high. The problem this time we have seen in the last 3-4 months is that even though exports has been growing, imports are growing much faster than what the exports are growing. That means the trade deficit is extremely high in the last 3 months. is running around 20 billion per month. And if you see the last month, it was 59 billion of 59 billion of imports, whereas exports were around 37. Almost 22 billion trade deficit was there. Similarly, previous month, if you see 30 billion exports, 52 billion imports, that is another 22 billion trade deficit. And in the month of October, it was 20 billion trade deficit. So the trade deficit has been continuously going up more than 20 billion per month. And we know that whenever trade deficit goes, generally what used to happen is that it will get reflected in the foreign forex market. Rupee tend to become weak whenever there is a huge trade deficit. And some of them who has been in the market for long enough, they would have seen that in 2012-13 period and all, the same trade deficit problem came and rupee weakened significantly. But this time, the rupee did not weaken. I will show in the next slide. And this is the trade deficit data. And if you see between around 2000 and all, the trade deficit was a very manageable level of 1 to 2 billion like that. Then it started going up very sharply. So one of the reasons between 2005 and 2014 why the trade deficit went up very sharply is that crude oil from 40 dollars per barrel, it went to almost 140 dollars per barrel. So India is one of the high crude oil importing country. 80% of our crude oils are imported. Because of very high crude oil prices, our trade deficit widened very drastically. Almost 20 billion came in 2012-13 period. And because of that, our rupee weakened significantly. We had a balance of payment issue at that time. But luckily, this time, even though the trade deficit is more than 20 billion for the last 3-4 months consecutively, this time rupee did not weaken much. So one of the reason why this time rupee did not weaken is that at that time, in terms of GDP, our current account deficit was almost to 4.5 to 5%. But during these 6-7 years, our economy has grown. Even though at the same current account deficit, at the same actual value of trade deficit, our current account deficit is around 2.5% of GDP. So in terms of GDP, if you see, our current account deficit is just half what we have seen in 2012 and 13. That is one of the main reason why this time rupee hasn't weakened significantly in spite of record trade deficit. And the other thing is that our software export has been doing very well, and whatever trade deficit we are getting, it has been compensated by higher software exports. And how the current account deficit is calculated, I will tell, and a very interesting chart is there. It will be very helpful to you if you go through it. And if you don't understand now, just we can see the presentation we are mailing in. We can easily understand. So there are 3-4 parts here, how the balance of payment and current account deficit and how the forex reserves are calculated. You all know that forex reserves are at all-time high, and it used to change every time. Once in a week, government used to announce the forex reserves, how much forex reserves India is having, and how they are calculated. Sometimes it used to go up, sometimes it used to come down. And if you see this chart, we can clearly understand how the forex reserves are calculated. It's a very interesting chart. It will be highly educational for you, and if you understand this, it will be very helpful for you and very interesting also. This BOP is balance of payment. Balance of payment, always it will be 0. And current account deficit, what our government used to say, in 2013-14, we had a huge current account deficit of 4.7% of GDP. Now, because of high trade deficit, our current account deficit is expected to be around 2.5 to 3% in current year. And if you see that, we have basically two items in a balance of payment. One is current account deficit. The other thing is capital account. 2 accounts are there. One is current account, not current account. Current account, then capital account. And in current account, if you see, there are 2 things. Mercantile, The second one is invisibles. The merchandise is which I showed to previous chart. This is what the merchandise is. That export and import data, trade export and import data that used to come into this, that merchandise part. And India historically, if you see, means this item always will be a deficit for our country. Basically, before 2010, we had two items of major imports. One is the crude oil. The second item was gold. Now, after 2010, and particularly in the last 5-6 years, if you see, a third item also has come into it, which is the electronic items, which is basically the smartphone which we use. So three major items India used to import in a huge quantity, that is crude oil, the second one is gold, and third one is an electronic item. Now electronics is in the second place. First one is the crude oil, the second one is the electronic items, which is basically the laptops, the smartphones everyone uses, and the third item is the gold. And India always imports more than what we export. So basically there is a deficit in this merchandise part. And how it is balanced is that we have invisible item, which is basically consists of software exports, which comes into it. As you all know that India exports huge quantity of software throughout the world, and all that it gets in foreign in terms of dollars as well as in euros, it used to get it. So that part come in the invisibles. Also there is transfer and grants. For example, what it comes into there, somebody is working in US, means he used to send money to his family in India for buying properties or for household expenses or for buying gold or for whatever purpose. He used to spend $1,000, $2,000 every month. Somebody working in Gulf, he used to send money to India for building a house, for buying gold, or for whatever purposes. He spend money, he transfers money from a Gulf bank to Indian bank. That will come under transfers. So basically NRI transfer will come into it. So India has a big for a lot of people working outside our country, and it is a net for forex generator for our country. They transfer money every day, every month, and it's a big forex contributor. And services, Indians used to avail services of many foreign countries that we have to pay money to it. Similarly, many foreign companies used to avail services of Indian companies, but it is net negative. So software is net positive for our country, transfer is net positive, and services it will be net negative. So whatever deficit we are having in merchandise export, that is balanced by invisibles through software exports. This is what current account. And in spite of these surpluses, still we run a deficit, and that come into current account deficit. And the next is the capital account, which basically consists of equity and debt. And equity consists of two parts, which is foreign institutional investors, where they buy and sell. The second one is the foreign direct investment. Basically, foreign direct investment is a long-term money, and a company, for example, Sony, comes and keeps a factory in India, means it comes as a foreign direct investment. Apple, a mobile phone manufacturer, if he comes and put a factory in India, means it comes under foreign direct investment. Whereas the foreign institutional money is, they will come and buy shares in the secondary market, and it is little volatile, and it may come and it may leave any point of time. They have freedom to leave it. Whereas the FDI, it's a stable money, and that contributes equity portion of foreign capital account. Then we have debt part, where government used to take debt from World Bank and multilateral institutes, and that will come under debt part. And companies are liberal to borrow money in abroad through ECBs. 2 days back, Reliance raised almost 5 billion worth of money abroad, and that money comes under ECB, and it forms the debt part, which comes under capital account. Similarly, NRIs, they used to deposit in Indian banks, and once it matures, they can take it back anytime. The NRI deposit also will comes under debt part. So equity and debt forms capital account. So current account, whatever deficit we are we are having now, that used to be balanced by current account, and most of the time the current account used to have surplus, current account deficit, and current account and capital account. And current account we will have deficit, capital account we will have surplus. For example, current account we have a deficit of 40 billion, and capital account we have a surplus of 60 billion, means net we have 20 billion surplus. That will get added into the forex reserves. Suppose we have 600 billion of forex reserves. If 20 billion surplus is there between current account and capital account, means the forex reserves will become 620 billion. So this is how the balance of payment works. Hope you would have understand it. If you have any doubt, you can contact me. I will explain in detail further. And another important thing which has been happening in our country, through God's grace only I can tell, that our population has been continuously going up, whereas our cultivation area is not going up. But still our India till now hasn't seen any food grain shortage in last so many years. So one of the main reason is that our agri yield has been consistently going up. And if you see that in 1991, the area under cultivation is 127 million hectare. After 30 years, still at the same level, 127 million hectares. Now in 1920 also, the 127 million hectares are there, almost 30 years, in 30 years. But if you see that our population is not same what we had it in 2090 and 1990 and 2020. 30 years our population has gone up so much. In spite of population going up so much, in spite of area under cultivation remains same, our Food Corporation of India still holds record food grains. The reason is that the productivity has increased. Agri yield has increased in the last 30 years. 176 million food production, India did it in 127 million hectares of land in 1990. And in 2019-20, if you see, with the same land, India has produced almost 120 million metric ton of more food production. That means basically the yield has gone up very sharply in the last 30 years. But still, when you compare to China or any parts of the world, our yield is extremely low. There is a huge scope of increasing yield in our country, and many agri-chemical companies, they have huge scope over a period of time, because on one side population is increasing, whereas on other side the area under cultivation is gradually coming down. So the only way to feed 140 crore people means we have to increase the yield, otherwise the starvation, food production will come down, then starvation will happen. So the high agriculture yield will keep on happening, and many listed companies are there, and they have a huge scope in coming years. Companies which are involved in increasing agri yield. And sector wise, if you see auto, because of chip issues, there are problems are there. That is why if you see the auto companies posted lower sales. The only exception in this was Tata Motor passenger division. So the all others have posted a relatively poor average sales, mainly because of chip shortage. Two-wheeler, there has been some demand problem due to excessive rain and other issues. So overall auto sector sales is not good. And one sector which is likely to do well in coming years, for the next 2 years, 3 years, many foreign brokers are consistently telling that they will do well, is the real estate sector. And if you see the Mumbai property registration, the real estate sector for the last 4 or 5 years it did well, and 2021 it has did extremely well. Most of the inventories got sold in, and many foreign brokers has been consistently telling that the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 year time, the real estate sector will do well. And if you see the Mumbai property registration between 2013 and 2020, it was happening around 60,000 units. Property registration has been happening in 1 year positive, 1 year negative, almost flat for the last 6-7 years. It has been happening, but in 2020-21, if you see that the property registration has gone up by 70%. That means excess inventory has gone down significantly in the last 1 year, and many foreign brokers are eyeing this sector, and this sector is likely to do well in coming years. And if you see the companies listed, 3-4 companies are there. Godrej Properties, Oberoi Realty, Prestige is there. Then one big company, Embassy, which is an unlisted, likely to get listed in the next 6 months through reverse merger with Indiabull Real Estate. And these are some of the companies which can be watched for long term. FIIs continuously selling 3.3 billion. They have sold in this current financial year from April to January till date. And if you see the component of FII selling, it will be interesting. Actually, they have sold 13 billion worth of shares in secondary market, whereas in the primary market, they bought 9 billion. So the net effect is overall a sell figure of 3.3 billion, whereas actually they have sold more shares in secondary market, even though they have invested in primary market. This figure, whatever we are showing, is a net of primary and secondary market action. And in the last 9 months and 1 week, if you see that 13 billion they have sold in secondary market, and in primary market 9 billion they have bought it. So on conclusion, if you see, means many clients has been continuously asking me whether the market will see a sharp fall because of Omicron wave. Our Capstock's view is that we are not expecting any major fall in a market. Omicron wave, we are expecting that it will come and go in within 2 months, and it won't have major impact unless patients, a lot of patients get admitted. Government is unlikely to put full-fledged lockdown. So we are not expecting major fall in market. The other thing is that the February 1st is the budget, and generally January and February used to be a hectic month for stock market. We used to see a lot of pre-budget rally, and this time also we are expecting a pre-budget rally. Companies which are related to government policy decision, they used to go up, and a lot of stories used to get built in. And if you see 5-6 years back, one sector we used to do exceedingly well used to be railways, because at that time we had a separate railway budget, and stock used to go up very sharply. All the railway stocks used to go up very sharply, and 1 day or 2 days before railway budget, or 1 day on the railway budget day, it used to see, it used to fall very very sharply. And now the railway budget has got merged with our union budget, so I know railway play is there in the last 3-4 years. And but definitely we will see pre-budget rally. Companies, banks, fertilizers, and some of PSU company, PSUs, they used to have pre-budget rally, and we expect this time also we will see some pre-budget rally. And the other caution I used to always give is that the cats and dogs, that is companies with poor fundamentals, or companies don't have reliable management, poor corporate governance, don't have any reliability in their numbers, always play with caution, because anytime it used to turn around, and once it turns around means then it will be exceedingly difficult for exiting, because it will keep on hitting lower circuit. You won't get an exit chance, and you always play with cats and dogs only if you understand the risk and have exit strategy. And after falling or after losing money, and we should not blame the regulators or other stock brokers or stock exchanges that they would have avoided. Recently, many people told me that one IPO came with the Paytm. They came at an issue price of 2,150. Now it is 1,225. They started blaming the regulator. Why SEBI has allowing the loss-making companies? The same loss-making companies, Zomato listed at a 50-60% premium. At that time, no one blamed the regulator, telling that why they are allowing Zomato for listing, because it came into profit. No one blamed it. But when it went to Paytm went into loss, everyone start blaming the regulator. So Only when people start losing money, they will blame the regulator or a stockbroker or a stock exchanges that they are not safeguarding investors. See, always it is our money. We have to play it safely. No one will come and help, and we have to play it safely. So always be careful in cats and dogs stocks. Don't get carried away. Don't put all money in that. Always have some large cap stocks, quality mid caps. Put some portion in cats and dogs if you want to play speculative movements. Don't put 100% of money in this type of stocks. That is what the advice we give. He wants to watch foreign flows. Till December they sold heavily, and we have to see how the foreign institutional flows will be in coming year. Yeah, then Omicron impact, then result reaction. These things we have to see in coming days. Thank you. Now we will see the recommendations. So in recommendations, if you see, actually we are recommending 5 stocks. TCS. Actually, I shortlisted the stocks yesterday morning itself, but after we added it, the company came out with new in the evening after the 3:30. The company came out with the news that they are going to consider buyback. Around 4 o'clock yesterday, they announced it. So even before that, I added it. So we are expecting around 4,300 rupees to 4,500 rupees buyback price. And why we have recommended TCS this time is that historically, if you see the price difference between Infosys and TCS is that TCS used to always trade at premium to Infosys because of return ratios are better in TCS when compared to Infosys. TCS always trade at a premium valuation to Infosys. And 1 year back, if you see that TCS used to trade around 35-36 PE, whereas Infosys around 30 PE. But now what happened was that TCS stock has underperformed generally IT index and overall IT sector. And 1 week back, both TCS and Infosys has come into the same valuation of around 37 PE, which means that the premium valuation of TCS has evaporated. That is the reason why that we have recommended. Now the risk reward view, if you see, means TCS is now better. It looks better than Infosys. That is the reason why we have recommended TCS, and we expect the company to post stable results in coming quarters. Order book has been increasing, and we are recommending TCS. The second one is SBI. It is our perennial recommendation for the last 2 years, and recently price has corrected from 550, 560 level. It fell to 440. Now it has bounced to 491, and the company likely to do well, and the disbursement also has increased. And this is one stock which we will remain positive for another 1 to 2 years. And third one is BSE, and the stock has coming for re-rating on expectation of that NSE is going to come for an IPO. BSE stock price went up from 1,500 to 2,300 2-3 weeks back. Almost 50% return it gave within 1 month. From there it has corrected. We expect again it will start moving up from here. And the fourth one is Deepak Fertilizer. Recently the company raised money through QIP, and there are company is one of the largest producer of ammonium nitrate and other major chemicals, and we expect the company will do well in coming years. The last one is Chemplast Sanmar. Actually, it's a very interesting company because the company delisted its share at 14 rupees in 2012, and after 9 years, it listed the same company, came out with an IPO at 545. So during the IPO time, that is in September 2021, when the IPO came, there was a lot of debate happening that a company delisted at 14 rupees is coming at 545 rupees, and it is cheating many investors by doing that. Like that, I saw a lot of posts in social media. See, one thing we have to see that in 2012 the market condition was like that, and they delisted it. Now the market condition has changed and business fundamentals has changed, and what we have to see is whether at 545 the price is worth or not. If we start comparing 2012 price with now for so many specialty chemical stocks, means we can never buy a stock even now. Deepak Nitrate was trading less than 50 rupees in 2012. Now it is trading at 2,500. The same theory applies for that also. For whatever for Chemplast, why should one buy it at 2,400 when the same Deepak Nitrite was available at 50 rupees? PA industry, everyone knows that it is trading at 3,000 rupees. After so many splits, it is now trading at 3,000 rupees. In 2012, I still remember that our MD used to own a huge chunk of shares in PA industry, and he bought at around 40-50 rupees only. Now, if you adjust for split and bonus, that 40-50 rupees traded stock, it is now trading around more than 15,000 rupees now. Similarly, if you see Navin Fluorine, we bought it in our PMS at 300 rupees in 2012. Now, after so many split and bonuses, it is trading at 4,000 rupees. And if you adjust for split and special dividends and all, the price will go above 10,000 rupees. So we cannot compare 2012 price and 2021 price now, and then we can't say that it is overvalued. We have to see whether at current price it is worth or not. So Chemplast Sanmar, it is the businesses are doing well now. They have become now cash surplus. After IPO, they have completely made their they have reduced their debt to zero, and they have debt as well as cash in balance sheet. And it is a cash surplus company, net cash surplus company. The subsidiary company has debt, which is manufacturing PVC resin, suspension PVC, which is called a PVC resin, and the core company is manufacturing a pastel PVC and caustic soda, and it's an integrated company. And the suspension PVC in the next 4 or 5 years, there is going to be a tight supply internationally, and price is likely to be stable to strong, and that is positive for Chemplast Sanmar, and that is why we are recommending it. And the last review, if you see, Cadila did not work out as expected, whereas the ISGEC did well, 10% return, it achieved target. Carborundum Universal also achieved target. SKF and Raymond, you can continue to fold, it will do well. So overall, a 3% gain was there against a Nifty positive of 1.7%. So that's all for this presentation.